There's a lot of things that Borderlands 3 does not explain properly or just straight up lies about, which is why about 2 months ago, I started a short series going over the various different facts and tricks I learned from my thousands of hours in Borderlands 3. This video is mostly the same, except I'll be providing a bit more detail for facts that I think it's necessary for, and you also don't have to hear me say this is day blah 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 of posting a random Borderlands 3 fact every day until Borderlands 4 comes out 42 times. This video has been split up into 4 different sections: character or skill related, gear related, NPCs and enemies related, and other miscellaneous or Easter eggs. Let's just jump right in. Starting off, we have the fact that personal space is actually much stronger than you'd think. Personal space is a first tier skill in Amara's green tree that increases her gun damage by up to 54% based off of how close to the enemy she is. However, what the game doesn't tell you about this skill is that personal space's gun damage is actually multiplicative with regular gun damage bonuses, which essentially just means that a class mod with 35% weapon damage, instead of adding together with personal space to become 89% weapon damage, it multiplies together to become about 108% bonus weapon damage. The only real exception here is type bonuses like pistol or shotgun damage, which will still just add with personal space. Playing Dirty's skill description is worded incredibly poorly, to the point where a lot of people still don't actually understand how it works. The skill description in-game reads, after killing an enemy, Zane's next 5 shots all have a chance to fire an extra projectile. The way this is worded makes it seem like when you kill something, your next 5 shots will have a chance to gain a projectile. This is a horrible way to word this and leaves a lot of people confused. The way the skill really works is that upon killing an enemy, you have a chance to gain 5 stacks of Playing Dirty. Every shot fired will consume a stack of Playing Dirty and fire an extra projectile. So basically, as long as Playing Dirty's icon is in the skill bar, you'll fire an extra projectile with your gun. The percent chance on the card is for the skill to activate, not the chance for the extra projectile. Fadeaway crits are another big point of confusion. Although body shots in Fadeaway stay critical and activate actual critical hit skills like Leave No Trace and Head Count, they don't get anywhere near the same kind of scaling that true critical hits do. Body shots fired in Fadeaway only get critical hit bonuses from the Fadeaway skill and augments, so they're only really affected by the inherent crit bonus from Fadeaway and Unblinking Eye, but that's it. Any critical hit modifiers on your gear or skills like Hunter's Eye, or even the weapon you're using like the Unforgiven, are completely useless for Fadeaway body shots. Those various crit bonuses will only ever apply for a true critical hit on the enemy's critical hit spot. What's important to note though, is that Flak's Red Tree Capstone Megavore actually does count as a true critical hit, so it scales with any and all critical hit bonuses you may have. Moze also has her fair share of skills that don't tell you the whole story, like Superior Firepower. This very late skill in Moze's Purple Tree says that it increases elemental status effect by 20% per stack each time Moze or Ironbear ignites an enemy, up to 5 stacks. And while that is true, it is far from all Superior Firepower does. In addition to each stack of Superior Firepower granting bonus elemental status effect damage, each stack also increases cryo damage by 20% as well, meaning that at the maximum 5 stacks of Superior Firepower, Moze will gain an additional 100% cryo damage bonus, which is one of the biggest elemental modifiers in the entire game. When you think of a melee character in Borderlands 3, I'd like to think most people would think of Amara. I mean, she does have 2 skill trees that are very melee focused, and as such it makes sense that Amara has a melee augment, Blitz. However, Zane also has a melee augment for whatever reason. The Barrier Augment Deterrence field will not only change Zane's melee animation from his usual Digiclaw stab to an elbow bash, but it will also convert all of Zane's melee damage to shock damage, which is really weird for a character that has basically no other melee abilities. Superior Firepower isn't the only Purple Tree Moze skill that lies to you. Explosive Fury is also a big fat liar, only this time in a bad way. Explosive Fury is supposed to grant Moze bonus status effect damage and chance across the board, which would be a little bit helpful for other Purple Tree skills. However, this skill is completely broken and actually does absolutely nothing, making it the biggest waste of 3 skill points in the entire franchise, quite possibly. It's no secret that certain things in Borderlands 3 are locked behind certain levels. You can't get any Torgue weaponry before level 10, for example, and you can't get the radiation element until level 13. This is known as a level gate, But it doesn't just affect the player, it also affects Zane's Digiclone as well. From level 3 to level 72 without the double barrel perk, Digiclone will wield a Doll assault rifle. However, since Doll manufactured weapons aren't available until level 3, at level 2, Digiclone will instead opt for a Hyperion SMG. What's really weird though, is that assault rifles aren't available until level 6. So why is Digiclone allowed them from level 3 to 5, but not a Doll at level 2? Flack's tier 2 blue tree skill, He Bites, causes Flack's pet, whichever one it may be, to reflect a portion of damage dealt to them back at their attacker. It isn't just bullet damage reflected back by this skill though, it's pretty much all damage. This includes novas and melee attacks, and my favorite usage of the skill is in the Guardian takedown when fighting Anathema. If Pet happens to be in range of Anathema's insta-kill nova, she will get that damage reflected back at herself. And with enough points into He Bites, you can straight up skip to Anathema's next immunity phase just by reflecting her nova back at her. Harmonious Havoc is yet another Purple Tree Moe's skill that is a bit more complex than it would originally seem. This skill grants Moe's bonus gun damage by up to 10% per each weapon equipped that matches the element of the gun she is currently holding. So if she's holding a fire weapon and has 3 other fire elemental items equipped, she'll gain 30% bonus gun damage. But this skill works a little differently with dual elemental weapons like Maliwan weapons. When a Harmonious Havoc looks at the dual element weapons, it only looks at their primary element. Which means if you have 4 flippers with their primary element being shock, but different secondary elements, you will get the 30% weapon damage regardless of which element you have selected on your flippers. By now, you've probably realized just how much Gearbox lies in their skill descriptions. But by far, the most egregious lie has to be with their predetermined skills. There are 5 skills in this game that claim on the card to be a random % chance to activate, but actually have a set pattern for whether or not they should activate depending on the amount of points in the skill. These 5 skills are Moses' Short Fuse and Means of Destruction, and Flack's Head Count, Leave No Trace, and Two Fang. For example, Two Fang with 5 out of 5 points, starting from your first shot after loading in, will activate. Then it won't, then it will again, then it won't 7 times in a row, then it will, then it won't, then it will, then it won't twice, and then it will again. These patterns will theoretically go on forever, but considering how much other stuff there is to focus on in this game, it's really only practical to know the first 15 to 20 iterations. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe Two Fang in Borderlands 2 also functioned in a similar way, but I'm not 100% positive about that. If you're hearing this, chances are you're enjoying the video. If that's the case, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I live stream every Saturday to Tuesday starting from 6 PM Eastern Time, and to celebrate the launch of Borderlands 4, I will be doing a 24-hour live stream on September 12th starting at 12 noon Eastern Time. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the stream. Amp shields got a big overhaul in 3, whereas instead of boosting your shot by a flat amount like they did in Borderlands 2, they will now boost your shots by a percentage. Borderlands 3 also changed the way that amp shields work with multi-pellet weapons. Kind of. Legendary amp effects in Borderlands 3, so the rerouter or the version 0.m, will only ever amp one projectile of a multi-pellet weapon. However, generic amp parts on shields will amp every single projectile of a multi-pellet weapon. So a regular purple with 2 amp parts, it'll buff every pellet. Infernal Wish with 3 amp parts, it'll boost every pellet. Version 0.m, it'll only amp 1 pellet. Projector shields are another new addition to Borderlands 3 that, when crouching, project a physical barrier in front of your character, granting damage reduction but removing your shield. What's interesting about projector shields is that if you activate photo mode while crouched, the physical barrier will move with photo mode. And what's even funnier is that you can actually move around the Anointed Zealot's explosive balls with the projected shield. And there's not really any practical use for that, I just think it's pretty funny. Skill descriptions aren't the only things that lie in this game. Sometimes weapons do too. The Reflux Shotgun is a perfect example of this. The Reflux claims to be a corrosive shotgun. It shoots corrosive damage, and the card says it's corrosive. However, it actually has the shock elemental part, just like a Storm or the Brainstormer would have. And it's actually the Reflux's unique barrel that converts its damage to corrosive after the fact. Mose's Green Monster class mod also has quite the hidden secret. According to the item card of this class mod, after firing her weapon for a few seconds, Mose's weapons gain bonus corrosive damage. The longer she continually fires her weapon, the greater the bonus. But it's way more complex than that. With a Green Monster equipped, after firing for a few seconds, Mose starts stacking a buff, granting her 7.5% bonus corrosive damage per second, up to 100%. This buff continues to stack regardless of whether or not Mose continues to fire, but does reset upon reloading, swapping weapons, or on the first shot after a gunfire break. This corrosive buff applies to weapons, grenades, and melee. And for the final kicker, in addition to the corrosive bonus, the Green Monster buff also stacks 2% bonus splash damage per second as well, up to 100%, that applies to weapons, grenades, and Iron Bear. Speaking of class mods not telling you the whole story, Flak's Bounty Hunter class mod. According to this class mod, Flak has a 3% chance to activate all purchased hunt skills when dealing gun damage. Additionally, all bosses are now treated as humans, beasts, and robots for Flak's hunt skills. What the game doesn't tell you, however, is that in addition to everything else, any kills with the Bounty Hunter equipped will grant interplanetary stalker stacks as if the enemy killed is a human, beast, and a robot. So not only do you get the basic damage and pet damage buff from every enemy, but you also get the extra skill damage, corrosive damage, and sometimes movement speed, though that doesn't seem to work very consistently. There is also a bug with this class mod where if you equip the Bounty Hunter during a boss fight, the Hunter's Eyes bonuses will still persist, which can allow for a little bit of extra damage in a boss fight. The Iridian Fabricator, or Gun as it's better known by the community, is a special weapon that consumes iridium instead of ammo and shoots guns instead of bullets. Something that a lot of returning players might not know about the Gun is that the Gun also has a legendary firing mode, which guarantees legendary weapons at the cost of 250 iridium. Additionally, a lot more people might not know that the Iridian Fabricator also benefits from gear or skills that add additional projectiles to your weapons, like Flak's Two-Fang, Zane's Playing Dirty, or the Infernal Wish Shield, and will shoot more weapons for each additional projectile that is added to the gun, even in legendary mode. Necrobugs was a class of enemy that was added with Borderlands 3 and includes Vandas, Mantas, Manticores, Dejiras, Coraxes, and Aeroxes. But Manticores by far are the most interesting additions. It's kind of hinted at by their names that Manticores are a combination of Mantas and Coraxes, and while it's generally really hard to notice in-game as combat has a tendency to be kind of blinding in Borderlands 3, you can actually see, in real time, Mantas and Coraxes fuse together to create Manticores, which is a super cool detail. Tyreen the Destroyer has a bunch of attacks, but there is one specific attack that is unlike any other, her spiky ball of iridium attack. This attack, if timed right, can actually be punched back at Tyreen using the Iridian Resonator you got from the vault on Promethea. Now, there isn't really any usable application to do so, as the damage it does when punched back is pretty minimal, especially at higher mayhem levels, but it's still a really cool addition to the game and just goes to show how many small hidden details there truly are in Borderlands 3. Guardians have a very strong presence in Borderlands 3, with them being featured across multiple story missions, tons of endgame content, and even one of the game's only standalone raid bosses being a Guardian of some sort. Sometimes when a Guardian dies, a red orb will spawn from its corpse and float up to the sky. If there's a nearby Guardian, the red orb will try to seek them out and level up. Otherwise, it just floats up to the sky and disappears. However, if the player manages to destroy this orb, it will actually drop a rather special ammo pickup that restores all ammo pools to full, which can be especially helpful in the Guardian takedown. For some reason, the fishing nets in the Guns, Love, and Tentacles DLC also drop this ammo pickup, which I thought was a little weird. Shiv is the very first boss you fight in this game, and despite being a pushover, he gets revenge in other ways. Shiv's two dedicated drops are the Moxie's Bouncing Pear, a Pangolin Grenade, and the Ripper, a Doll SMG. Because of the way that level gates work in Borderlands 3 though, both Doll SMGs and Pangolin Grenades are unable to drop at level 2 when you fight Shiv, meaning you won't be able to get these items until Mayhem mode or True Vault Hunter mode. Tiny Tina has got to be one of the game's most iconic characters, thanks in part to her hugely beloved DLC and entire spin-off game series. In Borderlands 2, Tina's debut game, her character had a glitch where her eye would just randomly twitch to the side. Upon discovering this though, Gearbox thought it fit with her super quirky personality, so they left it in. In Borderlands 3, Tiny Tina returns and she once again was given a facial twitch, though this time it was intentional. We just talked about the Seer and how Guardians drop their souls upon dying. Of course, the Seer, being a Guardian, also drops their soul after death. Only the Seer's soul is a little different. Instead of a red orb that can be broken for a unique ammo pickup, the Seer's soul is a white orb that cannot be broken, no matter how much damage your character does to it. This was very clearly a deliberate decision made by someone at Gearbox, so I'm curious to see if the Seer will return in Borderlands 4. Sluggers were a new COV enemy type added to Borderlands 3, and like the name suggests, they carry around a baseball bat to use as their primary weapon. That doesn't mean they can't attack at range though, as sluggers actually have the ability to hit your grenade back at you when you throw them, which can cause some serious problems. They can also do the same with Teeter or reload chucks, so be careful where you throw your fully stacked anarchy. Skags and Wolven from DLC 2 also have a similar ability as well, where they can catch your grenade or Teeter throw in their mouths, then either run away with it and have it blow up in their mouth, or jump at you with it and sacrifice themselves for a bit of damage to the player. Leveling up is pretty important in Borderlands 3. It gives you skill points, increases your max health, and fully restores your action skill cooldown. However, this game, and I'm pretty sure all Borderlands games, have a mechanic known as a level up bonus, where for around 60 seconds after leveling up, all damage you deal will be doubled, which is very nice when it happens right before a boss fight. Aista the Invincible drops some pretty sweet loot, but if your build isn't up to the task, he can be a bit of a pain to farm. However, there is a way to speed up this farm drastically. During Weaslas Part 3, after defeating Aista's invincible form, your quest objective updates to revive Aista. However, if you choose not to revive Aista, every time you save quit and reload back into the Skittermaw Basin map, Aista will spawn downed and a new set of loot will spawn on the ground, which makes getting my beloved Skullmasher much easier. Speaking of farming quickly, save quitting and reloading between each farm takes so much time. Luckily, there's a ton of bosses that don't require a save quit to farm. Tom and Zam from the Guns, Love, and Tentacles DLC can be farmed by killing one brother, then fast traveling back to the What Beats Beneath fast travel. The two mini bosses in Joey's Arena can be farmed by killing them, then either dying or fast traveling back to the start of the map. If you want different mini bosses, you simply have to save quit until you get the ones you want. Freddy the Traitor is a loot pinata and can be farmed by simply killing him, then fast traveling back to the start of the map. And Hemovorus can be farmed without save quitting or spending extra Iridium at Mayhem 6 or higher by simply killing them, then fast traveling back to the start of the map. Just make sure not to kill Vermivorous. Moses' character model has a fully functioning watch that not only tells you which cardinal direction you're facing, but also what the current time is, and it's accurate to the in-game time of photo mode. With that said, there's quite a few time quirks in this game, such as time moving much faster on Skywall 27, time always being stuck at 12 AM on the Heck planet for spooky ambiance, and time being outright frozen on Gehenna until you give Juno the Sheriff's Badge. When you first arrive at Eden 6, you'll notice a car drives by and shoots someone, and while this is meant to be the setup for a side quest, I don't care about that. What I care about is the car. This car is unable to be destroyed, no matter how much damage is dealt to it. It can still get status effects applied to it though, which means that with good enough timing, you can use a cryo or shock weapon to freeze the car and then hijack it, getting yourself a completely invincible car, which doesn't end up being super helpful in this area, but it's still pretty fun. Mayhem 10 and 11 are the same mode. I feel like I've said this 1,000 times already, but they're the same. I know the menu says they're different, but people have dug into the code and found that Mayhem 10 and 11 are the exact same. The loot is the same, the cache is the same, everything is the same. The only difference is that Mayhem 11 has no modifiers, so if you don't like modifiers, there's no reason not to play on Mayhem 11. In the Psycho Krieg and his fantastic Fustercluck DLC, during the mission What Love Remains, where you're rescuing Maya from an evil anthropomorphic train thing, various portals will open up for the aforementioned train thing to travel through. What's interesting about these portals though, is that the image shown inside of them is actually the Southpaw Steam and Power map from Borderlands 2, where you kill the 4 Hyperion assassins masquerading as bandits. The Jacob's Estate map has a secret loot room that can only be accessed by completing random actions within the manor. The loot from this room is pretty sad and absolutely pales in comparison to Villa Ultraviolet's loot room and especially Valhalla, but it's still a pretty neat detail. To access this secret room, you need to activate this portrait of Aurelia on the wall, spin this bust in the library and push the button underneath, then spin this bookshelf near where you get the record for Wainwright. Then, upon returning to the main library on the bottom floor, there will be a bookshelf with a skull that can be activated, revealing the secret loot room. There's actually another 2 secret rooms in Jacob's Manor that can be found by simply shooting the wall into them down. Additionally, a lot of cowboy portraits in the manor can be moved and have some stuff behind them, usually cash and iridium. Everybody loves barrel trolling their friends in Borderlands games. Borderlands 3 made this especially easy with the ability to essentially throw barrels where you want them to hit. Borderlands 3 also added new interactable objects as well, with various gas cans hidden around the game that can be shot dealing fire area damage, and fire extinguishers that can be shot dealing cryo area damage. Meaning that in Borderlands 3, it's technically possible to fire extinguisher troll your friends. My favorite new clutter object though is the many spray paint cans that are scattered across various maps, as when you shoot them, they will actually spray out a bit of paint, which I just personally find very cool. There are a lot of books scattered across the various maps in Borderlands 3, and while most of them are closed, you may have noticed almost every single open one has the same story written in it: The Hunters. Usually these books are too low resolution to actually be legible, but in the Guns, Love, and Tentacles DLC, one of these books is actually high resolution enough to read, which shows that The Hunters story is actually just the intro to the original Borderlands game, which is a super cool callback. Elevators are the absolute bane of my existence in Borderlands games. You got Cromarax's elevator, the Buzzard's Nest elevator, the Control Core elevator. Needless to say, all my homies hate elevators. Which makes it all that much worse when I found out that the elevator you ride during the Atlas at Last mission to fight Katagawa Jr. is actually slowed down during the story mission to allow for Katagawa Jr.'s monologue. And this isn't the only elevator in Borderlands 3 that does this either. The elevator in the Jackpot DLC's VIP Tower also slows down during the final mission to let Pretty Boy monologue at you, as if I hadn't spent enough time riding an elevator in this series. Money is the root of all evil, or something like that, but it's also very important in Borderlands 3, as buying all of your SDUs costs almost $150 million per character. And while there's many different ways to make money, one of those ways is just straight up theft. If your character has $0, no more, no less, then you can go to Moxie's bar on Sanctuary and steal exactly $3 out of her tip jar, which I think is absolutely hilarious. What's even better though is that Gearbox actually had Moxie's voice actor record voice lines specifically for this interaction.
Did you really just do that?
The mail system is another addition to the series first added with Borderlands 3. Not only can your friends mail you cool guns they find, or the Malix Bane, but you can also receive random loot from Hammerlock and Zero for completing their crew challenges. Then there's also manufacturer mail rewards, which is essentially kill 100 enemies with a certain manufacturer's weapons, and they'll mail you a new gun of the same manufacturer. This goes for every gun manufacturer, whether it's Atlas, TDR, COV, or anyone else. COV mail rewards though, will sometimes be an Atlas weapon. And while I originally assumed this to just be a classic Gearbox coding error, it's actually intentional and is a reference to an echolog that can be found on the Meridian Metroplex map, where Marcus talks about selling bricked Atlas weapons to the bandits.
After Atlas went out of business, I was the only gun runner on Pandora with a stock of their weapons. I thought it would be a gold mine, but those Atlas bastards were tricky. They installed brickware on every gun they sold. When the company went under, their weapons disabled themselves. What a waste. Oh well, at least I can always unload this junk to the bandits. Those chumps will buy anything.
In the Krieg DLC map, Sapphire's Run, there are many floating purple platforms that serve to bridge the gap between areas. Some of these purple platforms float in midair and kind of bounce when stepped on. However, thanks to the way that Gearbox programmed this, If you spam jump on these platforms, they will raise up, and when you land on them again, the animation resets, which then raises them up again, and again, and again. So if you just keep spamming for long enough, you can get these platforms pretty high, which as far as I know, has no practical use, but it is very fun to do. Photo mode was a great addition to the series, especially as a Borderlands content creator. Photo mode has saved me hours fiddling with mods trying to get the perfect screenshot. But photo mode isn't just useful for photos. Using photo mode actually extends your interaction distance for a little bit as you close the menu, which means you can do all sorts of cool stuff with it, like getting items that are out of reach without using the lost loot machine back on Sanctuary, getting back into Fort Sunshine without having to ride the rail all the way back, steal cars from a distance, and you can even use photo mode in the bank in Vestige to clip through the ceiling and get the loot early without ever completing a single mission in that DLC. Vehicle customization ramped up in Borderlands 3. No longer is it just pick a skin, pick a weapon, and go. Now we have primary weapons, secondary weapons, skins, armors, boosters, and colors. However, skins don't just change the look of the vehicle, they can also sometimes change the sound of the vehicle as well, as some skins will actually change the horn sound effect of the vehicle you're using. In Borderlands 2, in order to unlock the secret stash, Claptrap tasks you with collecting 139,997 brown rocks, killing Ugthak, Lord of Skaggs, pilfering the lost staff of Mount Schuler, defeating the Destroyer of Worlds, and dancing for his enjoyment. Naturally, all of those objectives become moot when Claptrap's stash reveals itself, but they'll get done eventually. In Borderlands 3, Claptrap has a clap list, a list of missions people have asked him to complete for them, which of course means they're our job now. These missions are to help Miles Brown recover his prized 139,997 brown rocks, help the Lord of Skaggs destroy Ugthak, help Ace Baron get medical supplies for the Mount Schuler medical facility, beat an in-beta game called Destroyer of Worlds, and dance with Baby. It's fairly obvious that these missions are a callback to the objectives Claptrap originally gave you in Borderlands 2, which I think is insanely awesome. Dunks Watson is a side character in Borderlands the pre-sequel who tasks you with getting a basketball so he can hit an awesome slam dunk. But when he actually attempts the slam dunk, he breaks orbit and goes flying into the empty void of space, never to be seen again. That is until Borderlands 3 anyway. If Sanctuary 3 is stationed at Pandora before Lilith has firehawked Elpis away, there is a very, very, very small chance that Dunks Watson will float by Sanctuary's front window, still holding the basketball we got for him in the pre-sequel. And when I say very, very, very small chance, I mean very small. It took me like 5 hours of just standing outside of Sanctuary to get the footage for this video. Borderlands has always alluded to some sort of deeper connection between Sirens, Iridium, and the Vaults. In fact, Borderlands 3 basically outright confirmed Tannis' theories about such things. But if that still wasn't enough evidence for you, whenever Amara uses Phasecast, for a split second, you will be able to see a Vault symbol summoned between her hands before firing her astral projection, which should be more than enough proof at this point.